Heaven's wild. We're talking about heaven.
Yeah. I put at the top of my sheet about this whole heaven conversation. Get ready for a lot of I don't know, and the Bible doesn't clarify that.
First of all, that's not the answer I'm looking for. Neither are you. Okay, don't let him get away with it.
Yeah, don't let Greg off the hook.
Wait, I preached one of these ones.
That's right. That's now you've moved from like off camera to kind of on camera to here we are.
Here we are.
Yeah.
Mainly because I was 1/3 of the questions that happened.
I think we should flip the podcast. So you should answer 2/3 of the of these questions.
What a great idea. Yeah, I feel that. Lots of I don't knows, right? Like there's so much intentionality behind some of even the visualization of what the writers in scripture were trying to help people understand. There's cultural understanding of it that we were talking about this the other day. Is just like I can't even begin to understand what they were going through emotionally, physically, like all that stuff with it, let alone like understanding some of the cultural nuances and the like surrounding religious nuances that they knew that I have no idea because I'm hearing it through thousands of years of trying to piece it together well. Like,
yes,
lots of I felt that doing the what is heaven thing. I'm like, how do I talk for 30 minutes about, I don't know what this is going to be, you guys. No one does.
But I thought the way you started that message with the Grand Canyon idea, like, well, how would you describe that to someone else, right?
Yeah.
How would you describe that to someone who hasn't seen it? Like it's like, oh, we need illustrations like that to just appreciate like, hey, I know there's a security in being able to pin something down and say it's exactly like this.
Yeah.
Like there's we want certain personalities want that.
Yeah.
And it's just not what the scriptures give us.
Yeah.
And I think life can be actually better without having everything pinned down. But some of that I know is just my personality that's more free with like, let's have a little adventure, figure it out, mystery. Yeah, that's good. So
to be fair, someone at the 9:00 service, so we do Thursday night, 9 a.m., 10:15, 11:30. Someone at the 9:00 service. So we record Thursday. So if you've watched it online and that's the only place you've consumed this, you have no idea about this. Someone had the audacity, and by audacity, I mean the intelligence. In the middle of the silence, when it's the like, how would you describe someone who's been blind their whole life, Grand Canyon? If from the back corner of the room just goes, watch your step. Which then turns the whole image around where it's like, oh yeah, you technically gave me something that describes the Grand Canyon, but I don't know anything about it. Like like, yeah, you've told me something about it, but I still don't know what it is. Like, which then just changes even, it feels very much in line with the like, yeah. Are there streets of gold? Is this the thing? I don't know. Watch your step though. Like I can tell you that because you're still walking into a street, I guess. Like,
yeah. We can throw this picture up probably right now as I'm talking because media is amazing. But one of the images that I use with families who have lost someone they love is I'll give them a picture. This is not original with me. I'll give them a picture of a baseball player who's hit a home run and they're rounding third, right? And they're coming home and their whole team, it's a walk-off home run. Their whole team's waiting on them. And as much as I don't like the Chicago Cubs, it's usually a picture of the Cubs, right? So as is the picture that you're probably looking at the screen on right now. And I always use that as a metaphor to say, hey, like, I think this can help us appreciate what's going on, right? Someone is going home, right? And there are people waiting on them and cheering for them. And especially if you're a baseball person and you have felt like what a walk-off feels like, it's really a great image. I've had families take that image and like they had it printed and put next to the casket for the visitation, right? Because that image meant that much to them when I gave it to them. But here's the point. I think that is the same idea as Streets of Gold.
Yeah.
Right? And if you try to say, wait, but, did the whole team come out of the dugout to celebrate? Was there anybody left? Was it like, you start to when you try to break it down.
Ship group come out.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, and like, but what if he gets hit on the head with the Gatorade thing as it comes up? Like the moment you try to break it down further than the beauty of the metaphor, you lose the power of it and the beauty of it.
Yeah.
And so that is, and we got some good questions and some technical questions about, jewels in our crowns and things like that. And I just, I let metaphors be metaphors.
I think that can be the tee off into let's move through what we got. Yeah. Let's do it. So the first line underneath, I don't know, and the Bible doesn't clarify that. I don't think they're necessarily related specifically, but is cremation. We got a question about cremation and bodies raising, and I'm surprised no zombie questions.
Yeah, clearly lacking the zombie category. Yeah, but cremation was the most common in-person question I got during the series after services. Hey, and so I always tell people, let me give you my answer to this, and I don't know if you'll be surprised. So, my answer is, I'm not concerned about your salvation if you choose to get cremated. The resurrection can still work, like all those sorts of things. That's all real. And like people go to like, science and history, which I think is good. Like for sure, people have been maimed. They died in horrible ways. People died thousands of years ago, and there's not much left there. Like, so you get technical about resurrection. Like you're going to be fine cremation wise. And also, I'm not getting cremated.
I have to tell you really specific. Someone in my family exclusively wanted cremation in the off chance that zombies do end up being real. So
yeah, and it's good for us to remember, like we're not being flippant about death, right? And like especially I always run this through my mind, like we're around death because of our roles more than the average person is. And we're around it sometimes in rather impersonal ways where I may not have known the person who's going through that. So I think it's important to say that in honoring all of this. But sometimes it's actually helpful to be a little disconnected from the personal part of death to help us think about it, right? And so I just, on the cremation piece, I just always tell people, I'm like, I feel actually some obligation to tell you, I'm not going to be, but it's okay. Like, don't worry about it. If you should be worried about it, I would have told you. That's that's kind of my pastoral threshold.
There you go. Yeah.
So,
okay, great. Perfect. That's great answer.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not, go find us in the comments. Losing salvation. So that was one. So the correlation of that basically being, we're talking about who goes to heaven. That's the last week of the series.
Right.
So I know I've heard conversations from groups and teens where it's like, hey, like my sister believed at one point, and then now I don't know that she would say she does anymore. So
yeah. And I got the conversation more when I started to cast this as trust or allegiance, right? Because then it starts to feel like maybe separated from a moment, a decision that was made, and like it's attached to my life in an ongoing way. And I think great question. And candidly, can we acknowledge that we in Northwest Indiana is an area where some of my best friends who are at Reformed churches, right, have an orientation theologically toward this that is their orientation, and I respect it, even if I'm not entirely in full agreement with it.
Sure.
And also, Hiles Anderson, First Baptist Church of Hammond, it's all in our backyard. It's not as prominent as it used to be, and yet there was a strong push in some of those circles just to get somebody saved, and then they're fine forever, right?
Yeah.
And I think
tick the box.
If you checked that box, then there was kind of a religious presentation that basically said, as long as you pray the prayer, you're fine.
Yeah.
Right. And, the Bible doesn't say as long as you pray the prayer, you're fine. And so I want to be careful knowing that's in the water and in the context to say, hey, let's handle that delicately. Let's handle it not just delicately, but precisely, right? When it comes to the scriptures to say, what do they really say? Because I don't want to give someone false confidence about their heaven. I think that would be pastoral malpractice, right? To assure you that you're in heaven when
You'll be fine. Yeah.
when you're not.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And I also don't want to be a fear-based setting where it's like, oh, watch out. You mess up. You should worry about whether you're going to heaven. So, I would point people back to that message, right? That like, hey, it is by grace through faith. That's where our salvation is. It's not our own works, like all of that. Can you lose your salvation? I've probably said this on podcasts before, but you can't lose it. Like in the sense of I had it, and where did it go? Or I made some mistakes. Now I should be worried.
I don't have
right?
it.
That's not it. But it is my orientation toward this question to say, I have plenty of experiences with people who were Christians. They were genuinely Christians. They truly trusted their salvation to Christ. And later on, they now would announce that they have turned their back on that. Right. I am no longer a Christian. I do not believe in Jesus. And I think, they don't have salvation today if you've turned your back on that. That's tough in some ways because a lot of this conversation is around the confidence that I have salvation, that heaven is waiting for me. And, it came up in our questions. Like someone said, hey, Greg, you said that, there's a lot of people who believe they're going to heaven that aren't. Yeah. And, most of the time when I'm teaching, what I'm trying to do is channel Jesus, right? And Jesus says such things, right? He's like, don't think just because you say, Lord, Lord, that. So I'm trying to live in those same categories as him. But I know, again, some people live with more confidence than they should in general, not just about salvation, right? And some people lack security about all kinds of things in life, not just salvation. And I know when I get those two different personalities, any words that come out of my mouth could stir up doubt when I'm not trying to stir up doubt. I look at you, I see a sincerity, you're trusting in Christ. I'm not trying to create doubt. But others who think, I'm fine, probably fine. I'm American, I'm fine. I'm a good person, I'm fine. And they attach I'm fine to things that the Bible does not say. Right. You'll be fine about. Right. I'm actually absolutely trying to create some tension, some doubt. So if doubt should be there, I want doubt to be there. Right. And if doubt shouldn't be there, I don't want it to be there. And that's really hard when you're talking to hundreds or thousands of people all at once in the same crowd.
And that's where we always say, like, hey, like circles are way better than rows. Like this is as, and we unashamedly like try to make everything that we do super approachable to people who don't get what's going on.
Yes.
And when you get into some of these certainty versus clarity conversations or doubt versus confidence conversations, like there's a personal aspect to that.
Or I want to look you in the eye.
Yeah, I want to look you in the eye. I also need you to understand, like, that's probably like 3 levels deep beyond where, even in some fashion, where we're able to, with intellectual honesty, get to in a weekend experience where it matters. So join a group or a team.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. You totally should do that. Come on. So, but if I'm trying to delineate it, I just try to say, like, hey, if you are consciously rejecting Christ, then you should be concerned. If you are not consciously rejecting Christ, I'm not talking about messing up, right? We all mess up. I try to say this all the time. Then don't be concerned. You are choosing to do what Christ has wanted you to do, and you're going to fall short. I fall short. We're good.
Yep. All the time. Let's see. Why not a stronger push to respond the last weekend?
Yeah. So I felt this tension a little bit myself. Like, hey, I've talked about heaven for 3 weeks. Should you kind of go for it in the like, hey, this is the moment. Get people to become Christians today.
With every head bow. Every head bowed and
Mhm.
hand raised.
But I have a very particular answer to this, and I want it to jostle. I want it to jostle you, whoever's listening. Um, I'm not trying to get you to be a Christian so you can go to heaven,
Come on.
right? That is,
Say it louder for the people in the back.
it's huge. And I understand the logical progressions and the pragmatic, the ends and means, all of that.
Yeah.
That like, well, I mean, you may have even, I mean, you may have even been presented it this way.
Yeah.
If you die tonight, do you know where you'd go?
I very much was.
Right? I understand.
That is a part of my story.
And
yeah.
and it's a significant question.
Yeah.
I just think the message of Jesus is not say yes so you can go to heaven.
Mm.
The message of Jesus is say yes to Jesus.
Yeah.
Say yes to all that includes. Say yes to surrendering your life to him. Say yes to believing that he is better for you than you are for yourself.
Yeah.
That you need forgiveness, that his love for you demonstrated on the cross is so overwhelming. Say yes to Jesus. Don't try to say yes to heaven so you'll take Jesus.
Yeah.
And I know that might feel like a distinction that's not important, but it's so important. I'm not trying to manipulate you with an eternal years and years worry about it.
Yeah.
So you'll regretfully
Yeah.
say yes to Jesus.
Yeah.
I'm wanting you to say, I want Jesus.
Yeah.
That's the big piece, not I want heaven.
Yeah, it's almost like, again, like in the prep for my message, one of the things that ended up getting cut from my own like drafting of it was like it's basically in that like saying yes to get it versus not. Like one of the same is like it's like getting married purely for the tax break.
Right. That's it.
Like
That's it. Like
you're actually missing out on the reason why you would to be getting
married.
Yeah, like what is the thing? And in that, then what actually ended up getting put in its place is a quote by Dallas Willard, which basically is like, hey, like following Jesus, like the good news of following Jesus, isn't so that you get into heaven when you die,
right?
Like it's so that you can live in heaven before you die.
Now,
Like and the idea that like hey, I'm not giving you a get out of hell free card,
right?
And actually what I'm inviting you into is to experience in part like what life could and should be like according to God. Like I'm actually inviting you to experience imperfectly, but I'm inviting you to experience things as they are supposed to be.
Yes.
Which is a bold statement because it completely undermines like radical individualism and the idea that like I can just keep going on my own and I can figure it out and it's, you know, I'm living my truth and you're living yours and like all that stuff. But it's like, oh, following Jesus, actually, like if you were to try it out, Andy Stanley, our friend Andy Stanley, would say like actually it just makes you better and makes you better at life. Like it's just a really simple way of being like, actually, like what you're gonna find is like, oh, I didn't realize that life could be like this.
Right. That's it. And when I say I'm trying to channel Jesus, I'm like, I'm watching how Jesus teaches about heaven and about hell.
Yeah.
And I think he doesn't ignore it.
No.
Right. If it's real, we should talk about it.
Yeah.
And also, he doesn't manipulate it.
Right.
To be like, this is my trump card so that you'll follow me.
Yeah.
It's not. It's not his posture. So.
No, not at all. Heaven by Randy Alcorn.
Yeah, I think,
I bought it in prep and then opened it and went, I'm not going to get it through any of this.
It's a thick book.
It's a
long
ChatGPT to sum it up for me.
But I will say, because so many of the questions that came in were kind of the technical, like, how does it work? What's it like? That the book, it's just literally the title of it is Heaven, written by a guy named Randy Alcorn. He's a pastor. It's a good book. I don't hesitate recommending it. And he probably at least takes his best shot at answering all these detailed questions the best he can. And he'll be the first to say, I'm going out on a limb beyond what the scriptures literally teach to try to help you see this. Yeah. But yeah, if your questions are technical in nature, it's the right book for you.
Absolutely. This was a heart-wrenching question that we got about miscarriages, resurrected bodies. So the literal question, I've got it pulled up actually right here.
Read the question and I'll take my best shot at it.
We will have our bodies, when we were in heaven. So I'm curious what happened or what is happening or will happen to the 2 miscarriages I had at 7 weeks. There were heartbeats. I saw them at 6 and then at 7 weeks. And then there were no longer heartbeats.
Yep.
They were so tiny.
Yeah. I think it's okay to out both of us here that we are dads who have experienced miscarriages.
Yep.
Also, this is a real thing in real life for us.
Healthy.
And I think I have a great confidence that unborn children are children, and that their presence in heaven will be real. Like they will be there. I look forward to meeting our 2 unborn children.
Me too.
I don't know the technical answer to, hey, what will their resurrected body be like? Because their human development ended on Earth at this age. I mean, you could essentially run the same experiment with, unfortunately, the child who was 6 months old or 2 years old that passed. Sometimes because a lot of times say heaven's a whole lot like creation.
Yeah.
I'll ask people, I'm like, so how old do you think Adam was in creation? Again, without trying to be too literal about this, it's just the question. It's the question that jostles the right things, right? And that is, I don't know. I mean, I picture him a certain way, but the Bible doesn't tell me. And this is like if central to our path to heaven is trusting God, entrusting ourselves to God, to Christ, then this is an area I absolutely trust that God will figure out, that He has a way, that body will be whole, and that there will be the potential for a relationship. But I don't have any answers about, what age will that body be? How perceived as, yes.
Will it be developed in the way that we understand development even? I mean, gosh,
I mean, this is the question, right? So again, we'll get back into kind of some technical questions, but probably once or twice a year I'll say in a sermon, how much of God do you think you understand? Right? And I'll, again, to try to force the absurdity of literalism on this, I'll say, I don't know, 50%. Well, probably not that. 50% of God, you don't know. Probably 30% or maybe 5%.
7%. A healthy 7%.
A healthy 7%. And I want people to think about it for a moment so that I can show them how absurd it is even to think in these terms, right? How much of God I'll just speak for myself, do I understand? The answer is 0.0000000000001%. He's God. He's God. And one of the healthiest things we can do is just let ourselves sit for a moment and appreciate how much of God we don't understand. Now, He has revealed enough about Himself that we can understand enough about who He is, that we can have real experiences with Him. And yet His vastness, the way He thinks about the world, the way He relates to the world, I have no idea. And if I let myself think about it, I will come to the conclusion that I'm glad I have no idea. Because most of the time when I have no idea, it's like, and that scares the crap out of me.
Yes.
Right? But no, not with God. Not with God. Thank God that I have no idea, that I do not have answers to questions, that I can't even come up with the questions. And I want us to be able to rest in that. I actually think it's a big part of spiritual life, is to be able to rest in the grandeur and the vastness of God, to appreciate that our experiences we're having here are so temporary. They're so mortal. They're so small in some ways. And that doesn't mean they're not real or that they're not meaningful. It just appreciates that I can't understand. I'm actually not supposed to understand, as much as I want to pin something to the ground and have every answer for somebody. So
Even just for myself.
yes, yeah. I think that's, for most of us, we want the answer for ourselves. You and I sometimes are in the position like, I need to have the answer for you, right? Because I represent God, but
Yeah,
I don't have it. So
absolutely. So no marriage.
no marriage in heaven.
Yeah.
I think this is, again, let's put this in a similar category. My dad died.
Mhm.
My mom, she's not getting remarried. She had one husband, right? And I think she pictures heaven being that she and dad will be together, like married, and the family will be there. And I can understand, like, even the desire for that, right?
I want, if I experienced a little bit of heaven on earth,
Yes.
it was with him.
Yes.
Yeah.
But also, I have family members, I won't call them out by name here like I did my mom, who were married to someone, a guy married to a godly woman.
Yeah.
They had 30 years of great marriage. She died.
Yeah.
Right. And then he found another godly woman, and they experienced richness in a different way. Like, you don't have to compare the two to justify them.
Yeah.
It's just like, that was beautiful. He was married to 2 women.
Yeah.
While he was on earth,
And they're gonna figure out.
and they're all going to
the
be
right
in heaven,
one.
right? And this is no marriage in heaven isn't like, sorry, you don't get the good stuff, right? No marriage in heaven is like, I know this is going to be hard for you to understand, but there's categories in heaven that are going to blow your mind.
That we don't even begin. Again, marriage is a category of how we relate to each other in some part. Like, so the idea that it's a 1-for-1 transfer,
Right.
like,
Right.
in some ways I hope not. Like, in some ways I do. In some ways I hope not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just like, you can trust God with it.
Yeah.
That's old. I know it sounds trite sometimes, even when I just say it, but I'm like, I promise you it's not trite. It's better than anything. You can trust God that there'll be a reunion. I'm very confident of that. And there won't be marriage. And even if that makes you sad a little bit, like it may make my mom, like, no, it's going to be better than anything.
Yeah.
So
we got lots of questions about levels of heaven.
Yes, we did.
Which truly made me pause and go like, did I say something that I meant or didn't mean to say? And then I went back and listened to what you said, and I was like, did you say something? Because there was a lot of questions.
Yeah. So let's talk about levels in heaven. What do you think, Mitch?
Oh, great. This is good. This is really good. Okay. So, if heaven is life as God intended, everything put back into completeness, my sense of fairness, and my sense of equity, like we're all interconnected. Again, it's not we're all one. Like, I know that that's going to get down a slippery slope if I say like 9 more words around that. But like, if we are all put back into relationship with each other and it's complete, and we're in relationship with God, the idea that there's greater, lesser feels in conflict with that in some fashion. Can I put my finger on exactly why? Probably my own sense of justice, and probably my own sense of fairness, probably my own perception of like, I don't even know what levels means, even when the question's being asked.
Yeah, so I'm a little afraid here that I'm going to sound judgy toward people who asked about levels, right? But I do want to question the question, a little bit in the healthiest of ways. So think about this. If we were having this conversation and someone talked about levels, I'd say, what makes you ask? Right? Like, where does it come from? Where does the question come from?
I'm just trying to figure out how much the membership fee is to get to the next one.
To the gold standard.
Yeah, gold standard.
Move from silver to gold.
Yeah.
Platinum.
Black card.
Black. So that I love this, Mitch, because that's so American, right?
Here I am.
It's actually human to some degree. I mean, comparison is as human and as broken as it gets, right? I mean, how many messages have we done in the realm of like, hey, comparison thinking will kill you,
literally,
right? It's not good. It's not healthy. It's not good for you. It's not good for the person. But levels is a little bit comparison.
Yeah.
Right. Now, someone might legitimately say, no, that's not the reason I'm asking the question. I don't need to one up somebody. And I trust that about the person, about most of the people asking the question.
I'm willing to assume
Right.
the best. How about
Right.
that?
That's right. So okay, where else does it come from? Well, actually, some of it comes from culture.
Yeah.
Right. So, Dante's Inferno
Yeah, the levels
has
of hell.
7
so
levels of hell, and if
obviously-
there's levels of hell, then there must be levels of heaven.
obviously a mirror
and,
image of
right?
heaven.
And probably in some movie you watched or other book that you read. I'm just saying, like, obviously I'm getting a little bit at, did it come from the scriptures, right? Or did your conception of levels of heaven come from somewhere else? And then someone might say, actually, Greg, it did come from the scriptures. And I'm not going to argue with that. I think there are places in the scriptures that reference at least that we won't all have the same experience in heaven. So actually, let me read you one of these verses right now. This is Revelation 22:12. This is Jesus speaking. Look, I'm coming soon. My reward is with me, and I will give to each person according to what they have done. Right? That's a verse worth reflecting on and praying through and listening to. And this is my experience with this verse in particular. I'm going to read it again. I will give to each person according to what they have done. If you had a preconceived notion that was levels,
you're going to
then
read that.
Then you're going to read that as, and
there's an A level, a B level, a C level, a D level, and an E level.
That's not what he said.
Right.
But if you had a preconceived notion that, well, Dante's Inferno had hell, heaven probably too. I mean, actually, in the Mormon faith, they're really big on levels of heaven. That's not a Christian perspective on their celestial, terrestrial, telestial. Like that's not Christian theology, right? But again, that doesn't mean it's not in the cultural water. It doesn't mean it's not how your neighbor thinks about it, the book that you read.
Yeah.
But what I hear Jesus saying here is, you are an individual.
Yeah.
And I care about you as an individual. And I pay attention to you according to you as an individual.
Yeah.
I actually, and if my mom came to my 3 brothers and said, hey, I love you as an individual and I will relate to you as you are, she's not ranking us.
Right.
That's not, and Tim's number 1, Ben's number 2, and Greg, sorry, bud, you got number 3, right? You're not in an order. She's actually saying, I care about each of you as you are.
Yeah.
And in your heavenly experience, that will be...
You're not one of the masses. You're one of one. Like, you are you.
We're relational, right? I love you.
Yeah.
I care about you. I might even uniquely, again, we'll get into metaphor world, but I might give you an experience that is heavenly for you.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't have to mean rank order.
Right.
And I do think, the questions that kind of come along with levels are usually then get tied to our works here on earth.
Yep.
Right? How good of a person were you? Maybe works doesn't matter for whether I get in or not, but maybe works matters for...
Once I check the box.
Right. My ranking.
How it's a multi-level marketing scheme, basically.
Well, and even some of the questions, and I get this, right? Someone asks like, hey, like missionaries, right? Clearly missionaries would be
obviously
at the top.
Like
right?
Okay, Peter, Moses, sure.
Right.
But like
Mitch.
Guy who lived at heck no, techno. We're going, listen. I ain't claiming any of that.
But I do think it's like,
Guy lived in Uganda. Sorry.
Yes. Let's give honor where honor is due. Man, people who've made great sacrifices, like we can, Mitch is on our staff team, obviously. So he hears me say one of my favorite phrases: you don't have to push one down to lift the other up. Right. I know when we make arguments, one of the ways we do it is we try to push something down so ours looks stronger. But you don't have to do that. You can just lift something up. You can say, I give honor to the missionary, to the person who sacrificed, to the person who suffered on earth. I give honor to that. It doesn't mean I have to rank order. So that person's number 31, and Mitch, you're actually number like 38, right? So let's get at, I actually think comparison, think about this, comparison is part of the broken part of this world.
Yeah.
In creation, there was not comparison.
Right.
In the garden, there was not
Well,
comparison.
it's technically just Adam and Eve. So I mean, like,
And at the moment they disobeyed God and trusted themselves,
yeah,
they started to notice distinctions and differences and start to, I blame you, I need to put you on top, you blame me. So that whole, I just want us to be very careful about our conception of rank order levels and thinking that heaven will be that. Because, I mean, what's going to happen? You're going to be,
you're gonna be stuck at silver level for
Well,
all of eternity,
and you're going to feel better than the person who's bronze and worse than the person who's gold.
Yes.
Is that what heaven's going to be? That is, I promise you, that's not what heaven is going to be.
Yeah.
Right? Is heaven the place where I can actually feel good for the person who has gold when I'm just silver? Maybe that's what heaven's going to be. Maybe, I don't know. But it's like, oh, just be so careful about levels, rankings, putting yourself somewhere, putting someone else somewhere, feeling good or bad about being above or below someone. I'm telling you, when you read the Revelation passage and it says, no more crying, no more pain, no more, and that's just a beautiful way that you handled that part of the message. I just think, no more comparison.
Yeah.
No more. No more do I feel more than or less than someone. No more is that even in my mind.
No.
And heaven is not going to be that.
No.
So,
which is good news.
It is good news.
Process after I die, soul sleep, non-existence. Listen, soul sleep, I think is that the workout class? Like, or is that the recovery from the workout?
The recovery. I like that.
Yeah, soul sleep.
So,
soul cycle, and then you soul sleep.
This is an area I actually got. If you want to if you want to question whether you're a good teacher or not,
yeah,
one of the things I do is like, wait, I explained that,
yeah,
and yet apparently there's still lots of questions about it, right? Now maybe you missed week 1 of the series, right? And you still ask the question. That's totally legit.
Greg plays a mean trumpet, and by that I mean a literal mean trumpet.
But it's I can briefly clarify. Okay, you breathe your last on earth. Your spirit departs your body and does go to the presence of Christ. We've not yet had the resurrection. You will not yet experience your resurrected body. That will come at the resurrection. But it's also not just soul sleep, like time disappeared and doesn't exist. Although, back to the grandeur of God, you heard me potentially talk about God living not only outside of time, but how our conception of time, even if you try to cram God into time,
it doesn't make sense.
100 years feels like a long time to us, right? Oh, what's my dad doing? He died, it'll be 10 years ago this July. Like, well, he's in the presence of Christ.
Yeah.
That's what I know. And he does not yet have his resurrected body, because that will come at the second coming of Christ, when his body will be raised from the grave and will be made whole again. But all I can tell you from the scriptures is, the period between the time when someone died and the resurrection, they live with an awareness their spirit is disconnected from their body temporarily, and then it will be reunited in the future.
Yeah.
And go listen to the first week of Heaven When.
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 Wins. What happened to people who died before Jesus came?
So I'm going to give a very short answer to this.
Yeah.
We all live after Jesus came. And so our pathway to heaven is that we believe that Jesus was the Christ, right? We trust that. We orient our lives around it. We believe in a backwards direction, that he came and he was, and it was real. People in the Old Testament, before Jesus came, are saved in the same way, but their faith is that he is coming, right? They're doing it in advance,
Yeah.
right, rather than in the past. And I understand there could be some more technical questions about that, but in the biggest picture, that's how it works. That there was an old covenant,
Yeah.
and I'm trusting that the covenant is going to be fulfilled back then.
Yeah.
Now I trust that the covenant was fulfilled.
Yeah.
So same thing.
That makes sense. That's clear.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a single event that will clearly start the countdown to the last times?
I have two answers to this.
Oh, I'm here for it.
So my first answer is no.
Perfect.
In the sense of looking for modern events, like should I be watching for something that's clearly going to start the countdown clock? The answer is no. However, in a larger sense, you could say the answer is yes. That event was the resurrection of Christ, and we are in the last days. We have been in the last days ever since then. That actually was the event that started, clearly starts the countdown.
Yeah.
So.
I got like 9 other questions out of that, but that's fine.
Yeah.
Do others get more jewels in their crowns? Are there levels in heaven? Those who've done more. We've kind of hit at this.
Yeah.
Does it matter? Or does it matter? Should it matter? Let's see.
Yeah. Let's go to the next question.
Oh, gosh.
Mass murderers.
Yeah. Greg has said I don't think it's in this sermon, but he has said it in past sermons. He doesn't think he'll be in heaven next to a mass murderer.
Yeah. Let me clarify if I've been unclear about this. I expect there will be mass murderers in heaven, because after they sinned, most egregious, horrible sins, they encountered Christ and they sought his forgiveness, and he granted it, as he does to all of us who ask. So if I've ever said I wouldn't be in heaven next to a mass murderer, I need to take all that back, because I think I will be.
Yeah, I had someone ask, they're like, yeah, but
Right.
if they just get to go in, if at the even at the last second, they're like, okay, God, I guess I believe, and I was like, okay, you're missing the.
Right.
At some point, your theology does have to make room for the man on the cross sat next to Jesus.
Yeah.
At some point, and if it doesn't,
well, and I'm going to press into this, because I get this sometimes too, and I'm like, oh, you think you deserve heaven. I think I'm talking to a person who thinks they deserve heaven.
at least silver level.
Right, we're back to the levels. Because the mass murderer didn't deserve it, but I do. And he's just going to get in on the grace of God.
On the technicality that he was repentant.
And I want people to appreciate that none of us deserve it.
Yeah.
We're all getting in on the grace of God. So yeah, let's just be careful about being judgy toward people who are going to get in.
Yeah. I'm with you. Let's see. I'm going to jump down one. So a distinction question. Is it heaven or is it paradise?
What did I say earlier? I don't know. Or the Bible doesn't clarify that. Jesus uses the word paradise. Today you'll be with me in paradise. And so I'll go with that as the immediate experience that you're going to have after you die. I'm not trying to argue that my dad's not in paradise right now. You can call it that, and that maybe you want to call heaven the thing that's after the resurrection. I can see why you would do that.
Yeah.
To me, that is a distinction that doesn't make a difference.
Yeah.
What difference does it make?
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like the Bible's trying to be too precise with its language.
No, it's being culturally relevant to its own language,
Yeah.
right? A paradise in that time is a garden that's well protected from the aridness of the cultural and the literal climate that it was in. It's a literal, there's walls around it to keep it protected so that it can be cultivated well. That's the image, in the middle of...
Yeah. We're in metaphor.
Yeah, we're in metaphor again.
Yep.
So then that's where it's oh, heaven or paradise. It's oh, that's just the image, in the middle of the desert, in the middle of something, in the middle of a place where nothing should be alive.
This is alive.
This is alive, and not just alive, it's thriving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is probably a good spot to say, hey, we're going to throw a Pete Holmes clip in here.
Yeah, let's
All right. So he's a comedian who has an interesting spiritual journey of his own.
Very much so.
Not one that I can completely endorse myself.
Absolutely not.
And yet he helps us think about certain things.
He's a thoughtful guy.
He's a very thoughtful guy. And he says some things about metaphor being the most real thing. When we might have an instinct to think literal things are the most. If I can touch it and hold it, that must be the most real thing. But I think his stuff here about metaphor is right on.
There are some truths so big they can only be told with lies. That's a cute way of saying metaphor is the only language we have to speak of God. Metaphor means always true, sometimes really happened. Because what's interesting about the Bible, one of the weird things about that text is that it's metaphor overlain with history. Mm-hmm. But when you're trying to talk about the ineffable, metaphor isn't just as close as you can get. It's the only way to do it. It stirs you and moves you. The metaphors and the myths that stick with us, they'll rock you.
And it's not about solving the mystery.
No!
It's about appreciating the fact that it is a mystery.
And we want to talk about it. And more than that, we want to commune with it. And to know that, we have to give it some sort of symbol. Carl Jung says we're not transformed by ideas. We're transformed by symbols.
Here's how I think about this whole heaven conversation. Sometimes in the Commons area, I'm talking with someone after service and they want me to pray with them. And I love doing that. I pray with them. And I say, what do you want me to pray for? And they say, would you pray that I could get clarity about, and then whatever their subject is. And then when I actually say the prayer with them, I do not pray for clarity. Instead, I pray that they would be able to trust God without full clarity. And I think a lot of the heaven conversation is that. I'd love to have clarity, right? But ultimately, that's not what this is. This is about trusting God even when there's not clarity.
So in the grandest sense of things, heaven filled with lots of I don't knows, and the Bible doesn't clarify that. Hopefully it's been a helpful conversation for you. Hopefully it sparks maybe even a desire to continue the conversation. And if it does, like, again, like join the group, join a team here. Like, don't just sit in the wondering of it. And maybe it's even the conversation of like, oh, I want to have this with friends and neighbors. Like, we always try to help resource that. So if you use our app, like in every message, there's a discussion guide for you and a reading guide for you to help continue the conversation, spark new wondering, spark new questions, and to be able to even lead a discussion for maybe you and your partner, your spouse, your neighbors. But what I do know is that groups and teams use it too. So find other people to talk with about this, because this is just the start, right? Like the already and the not yet, right?
Yep. Well said. Thanks, Mitch.
See you guys.